Welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium. I'm your host, Jingalls90, and with me today are Befuddled Panda
Hello.
and Yettibeats.
Hello, hello.
And for this episode, we're not talking about books. Instead, we're going to talk about movies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was looking through my letterbox a couple weeks ago, and I noticed that 2023 has been a pretty strong year for movies so far, especially in the sci-fi fantasy department. So I thought it'd be fun to just kind of, now that we're halfway through the year, take a look at some of the things that are personal highlights for us, things we've enjoyed, and maybe get some recommendations out there for people who are interested. But first, Panda and Yeti, how do you feel about this year so far?
Yeah, I agree with you. It feels to me though, and Panda brought this up when we were talking beforehand. It's kind of like top heavy where I feel like the movies we're going to talk about, I feel like are like the big ones. Like we kind of nailed it in a sense, but that's just how I felt like this first half of the year turned out kind of where like last year you had RRR, which was kind of under the radar, where I don't really have any of them yet, where it's like, oh, everyone needs to see this and you wouldn't hear about it. I think Jingles picked one that is the closest to that, but it's top heavy. I feel like is a good thing where it's like a lot of these are big budget ones that people were like expecting and anticipating, and just frankly, just a lot of them paid off, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, at least for me, I didn't go to the theaters as much last year. This year, and the first 6 months, like I've gone quite a bit more already. And I haven't encountered one that's a true disappointment. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of winners and there are some that are just like, okay, that was fun. Not a new favorite, but that was fun. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for, hopefully what this means for the rest of the year too.
Well, the biggest thing I think we were recording like right before, like a week or so before, uh, Barbieheimer comes out.
Yep.
So unfortunately, we're not gonna be able to. We have to wait till the end of the year to talk about those. But
Yeah.
those are the ones where I'm like, oh man, I'd love to get a Barbie talk in here. But
Not gonna lie, I was thinking the same. Which you never would have thought we would say those words. But it looks so good.
It does.
incredible.
It looks amazing. And I think like that day in particular is a testament to for me of how this year has gone, is that there are people who are actually planning to see two very different movies
Yeah.
on a Saturday because
Yeah.
they want to be at the theater for those two events. And I had a couple days. My Regal Unlimited subscription has
Ooh,
Yeah.
been put to work this year. Like, I think my partner and I have been spending, probably every week almost seeing a movie. And there were a couple months there, like April and June so far, where we couldn't even keep up. There was just no
Mhm.
way we were going to get to see everything. So, yeah, I think it's just been a really fun year. And yeah, nothing too crazy. Like they're never going to a lot of these movies probably won't withstand the test of time, but it's been entertaining and fun.
I don't know what you mean. Oh, come on.
There are a couple maybe. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see.
Um, so these 3 movies from each of us are our top 3, but they're not in, like, a particular order.
yeah. So like, we were talking about it. Like, this is mostly like 9 movies we all think that we liked and we want people to check out. I wouldn't necessarily say these are my top 3. First of all, because you two both picked probably my top 3. But the 3 that I picked would be in there somewhere in the top 10 or something. And just, I didn't really rank them. I just said I saw these and like they stood out for one way or another. And yeah,
They were highlights.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely highlights. I would say two of these, like one I know I chose because yeah, we can get into it. Evil Dead Rise is not on here. I'll just spoil that much because
Oh,
I don't know how many people I can convince to actually see that movie. But maybe I can convince a couple others to see some other horror
You're not
movies
gonna
that are worth the
convince
time.
me to watch that. I'm a scaredy cat.
yeah. I tried to keep it to one horror per, you know, choice. I might break that rule after my third pick, but we'll
Well, I
see.
think what's interesting is the 3 of us, we have pretty different movie tastes. But where we overlap, I think that's where it's really interesting, where it's like, okay, we have three different, movie profiles, and yet we all like, XYZ.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, Yeti, you want to get us started?
Yeah, I'll start it off. And this movie is one that is not in theaters. It went straight to Netflix, and it's Nimona, the animated film directed by Troy. I'm going to butcher these names. Here we go. Troy Quane and Nick Bruno. Stars Chloe Grace Moretz, Riz Ahmed, Beck Bennett from SNL. And it's based, if you've ever read it, based on the N.D. Stevenson comic, which I really liked. And yeah, on Letterboxd I gave this 4 stars out of 5. Huron fan on Green Team thrashed this movie. How dare him? He hates fun and heart. But yeah, I really like this film. It's essentially a knight kind of gets framed for doing something heinous, and the whole kingdom is kind of against him. And this little girl who's a shapeshifter is like begging him to be his like side villain, like sidekick villain. And it's kind of just a coming of age story about, unlikely friends. It deals with acceptance and kind of the idea of being a monster and not fitting in, or inclusion. And I just thought it was really sweet. I thought it was really charming. It doesn't kind of, it's not the newest thing you've ever seen. You've seen a story told like this probably a bunch of times, but told by new voices and more diverse voices. And frankly, this art style I'm kind of a sucker for. It started with, Into the Spider-Verse, or popularized, and now everyone's kind of have their own take on it with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, The Mitchells and Machines, one of my favorite movies from the last few years. So I really dug it. And yeah, I think it's definitely a kids movie though. The humor is hit or miss, and it's just not aimed for a balding 34-year-old. But I still enjoyed it. I don't know if I don't think either of you have seen it too.
I have not. I knew there was an adaptation, but I didn't keep up with like when it was coming out, where it was gonna be. So when I saw it on your list, I was like, "Ah, dang it, it's out." I haven't read the graphic novel. I'm sure I own it somewhere. For the years that I've had it, I've just heard really, really good things. Like it is, it has a lot of heart. It's very entertaining, and I'm very excited. Like the fact that you really enjoyed it makes me want to see it more.
Yeah, I was hearing that it's just another version of the Iron Giant. Doesn't really push me away from it by any means. So I'm definitely ready to check this out.
Oh, I didn't know it was being compared to
That's
the Iron Giant.
Uh, that's
that's what
one.
Huron fan. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one
Oh,
disgraced member of the Green Team said.
okay. Well, I love the Iron Giant, so
But yeah, and then if I'm not mistaken, these are also the folks who did the She-Ra cartoon
Yep.
on Netflix, right?
oh,
So yeah,
okay.
I haven't finished that series, but I do really enjoy that quite a bit. So I am looking forward to what they can do with some more original work. Not that I mean, I think they got pretty original with that show too.
Yeah, and it was originally supposed to be like a Disney release, and Disney pretty much scrapped it. And there was a time where we just thought this movie was going to go the way of Batgirl, just never see the light of day. So even knowing that kind of gives it a little more of like a nice, like, oh, thank God they made this, because it deserves to be seen, and it's pretty fun. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm just a little. I don't want to poo-poo on Disney or Pixar too much because I do love them. I do grow up on them. But this idea that everything has to look like a Pixar movie, they all look, the Elemental, they all look the same. Or even Illumination, there's a very big animated movie, the Mario movie. It's fine, but they all look, Illumination, they all look the same. So now it's just kind of freeing and exciting that
Mm,
these movies are coming out with each to their own unique art style, which is, you don't want to get stuck in the same type of form.
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it has become increasingly difficult to tell the difference between what's a Pixar movie versus just a Disney animation studio movie, right?
Right.
I don't think most people can discern that anymore.
Right.
So it is nice to see, some originality coming out, which, like you said, we've got a lot. happening right now.
Hmm. And I'll talk about this in a later pick, but the voice work is just so it's just really good. You can tell that there's just chemistry and that the actors put their kind of actual effort into it, not just saying lines, and it really goes far. It really shines in a different movie we're going to talk about. But this one, the cast really has good chemistry.
Cool.
So yeah, go see Nimona on Netflix.
Awesome.
It's on my list for sure.
All right, Panda, want to give us your first?
Okay, well,
Oh
this is
yeah.
not going to be a surprise for anyone, but I did put John Wick 4 on this list, and it is rated
Whoop,
R,
whoop.
which as it should be. I mean, we already know who the director is. We know who's starring in it. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
all of that. And of course, it's the continuation of the John Wick saga, which apparently is not going to be the last movie for sure, I believe. I don't know, it keeps going back and forth.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they're standing on that, but
I think
I've heard
it
there's a
is
fifth.
yeah, I think it's, like, for sure not going to be the last, at least in the main franchise. And so I'll start with the pros, right? And there are a lot of pros, and some of them are
Mm.
very personal to my experience. But the things that are general are like you expect great action from these films. Like the director was a stuntman. He really knows stunt work and how to really capture it very well. Granted, there is a particular scene that is very comical, and when I was watching it in theaters, the reaction of the audience was just like, "OMG, is this really happening right now?" But you know what? I still enjoyed it. I think there were good character motivations from all sides. Um, like I said, really nice cinematography, not just the action scenes, but like Paris as a setting for this movie was beautiful. And, oh, that sunset or sunrise, I should say, wonderful, which Paris is it has a very special place in my heart, and, a particular location in the movie actually has a lot to do with, I should say, it's very special to me and Mr. Anderson. Um,
Ah,
and he also proposed by the Eiffel Tower.
or
Um
John Wick. John Wick
I was
shot a
about to
guy in the head.
say.
Anyway, so seeing all the like Paris shots like brought back really nice memories for us. And then we also got more of John Wick's backstory, like before, like way in the back, like of his past with his family, his like Russian family. So those are all really good. Donnie Yen was also really, really good. Just like his character and like the skill and very good performance. The cons, I will say there are a couple of cons. Like, if you're not invested in the John Wick franchise, like, it's not gonna be for you because it's more of it, and, like, when I say more of it, it's, like, more of it. Um, and with that, I do think the movie was a tad bit too long. The runtime was it could have been cut a bit more, but as a fan, like, I really enjoyed the movie as a whole, so
Yeah, I agree with you that it ran a little long. I think when we went to see this, we got out of the theater at like 1 in the morning,
Oh
which
boy.
was
Oh my god.
yeah, we started at 10. And once
Uh-huh.
you add all the previews and trailers
Previews,
and things
yeah.
on top of that, it just becomes way too much of an event. That being said, I do love like these movies as action movies strive for so much more continuity than they like really actually need to. And I just kind of love how everything flows from the first John Wick into this one in a way that actually offers like, really really good revenge story of
Mhm,
and all of the follow through for all the points of a revenge story. And then there's yeah, just some beautiful action sequences that they always, try to top without jumping the shark. Like I think there's some some scenes in here like where maybe it's a little questionable for this one compared to the others, but the ending I think actually justifies those decisions a little
mhm.
bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you made a good point, Panda, where I know this is like the bare basics, but in a world where we're getting these movies like Red State and that, all these stupid action movies from Netflix that don't actually travel to the places they're set as these big green screens. It's so refreshing to actually see them have these perform these things in Paris and in Germany, which I think like that they go to Germany for like a nightclub
Yeah.
scene, and even in Jordan, where in the desert, like you know, I feel like in the 70s, if they, we went back in time, people are like, what are you complaining about? Or why are you bringing this up? Everyone's shot on location. It's like, no, not anymore. Sorry. In 2023, it's awful. We can't get this as much, but it was amazing. It just really puts you in like Paris. And so I was super thankful for that. I like it. I think it's important how, like in this movie, there's just crazy things. There's Scott Adkins in a fat suit with an inhaler fighting, and the Skarsgård brother who's just weirdly creepy doing
Yeah.
these accents, and they're so outlandish that when you have a main character who's just so playing it straight, like I mean, John does kind of waver a little bit, but for the most part, he plays it straight. He has these short lines. He's deadly serious, and it really makes a movie. I always compare it to like Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse. He's a bouncer trying to save a town, but he's completely serious. He really believes he's going to clean up a town as a bouncer. And that's what I think makes that movie like incredible. And it's the same with John Wick, where like Reeves was like weirdly born for this role. And
Yeah.
it's, you can put whatever around him. You can put people, getting bit in bad places by dogs or whatever, falling downstairs over and over again. Like it's
Yeah.
I think you can leave sketch, and it doesn't matter because he's still this constant like presence, and it's wonderful. It makes for just a wonderful movie.
Yeah. That shot, that like from the top shot
Mhm.
in that one building, I could watch that like for a while. And we did get a lot of it. So that wasn't one of the things that I thought went too long, because I really enjoyed the maneuvering of the camera for that. But yeah, I think, there may be complaints like, and actually people might be saying, why are you putting John Wick on an SFF like movie list? And like, because of just how unrealistic a lot of these things are. Like, you have to suspend your disbelief.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And they do dodge a lot of bullets
or block them with their
or block.
With their with their fabric, their magic fabric.
unbelievable,
At that
incredible.
point, like, this movie is very self-aware. Like, if anybody thought they were
Right.
trying to take themselves too seriously, like, yes, there are moments that are very serious, but for the most part, the movie is very self-aware, and it's poking fun at itself for
Mm.
sure. And the callbacks to the first movie, especially the fact that like they made the first one and they just put it out there and didn't even know like this was actually going to be a franchise. It
Right.
was literally, people liked it so much, they're like, all right, let's make another. Okay, that one did well, let's make another one. So it's just organically born that way.
But people so desperately wanted to know what was up with those coins that they were able to make an entire hitman assassin system across the world.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I think it's like fantasy. It has this whole mythology, John Wick
Yeah.
does about these coins and this Assassin's Club thing. It really is closer to fantastical than anything real
Yeah,
life.
I agree.
But and I do love that. Yeah, the awareness is there, and the incorporation of the awareness is there in a way that doesn't make it hammy. Like I love that you see John Wick almost anytime he's fighting and he's out in the open, he's pulling his coat up over his head because he knows that's the one weak spot he has. So
Right.
he needs to like
Yeah.
run, looking around, and then shooting.
Yeah.
Um,
um The last thing I'll say about this is Lance Reddick. Ugh,
R.I.P.
Rest in peace. Gone too soon.
yeah. And it just made that movie hit harder.
Yeah. And I know I don't want to like spoil anything for any of these movies, but there is a moment that gets serious just talking about like gravestones. And I
Mhm.
thought that was one of the most poignant, just moments in film I've seen this year. And like you said, it's preceded by ridiculous fights, and actions. I thought that was, really moving. And real quick before we go, you said it, Panda. Like I think Donnie Yen elevated this movie to like another level. If he wasn't in it and like his arc, I kind of might have been a little more middling, where I was with 3, where it's like a little too much action. But the dynamic between him and John, I thought was just such a great, and how it kind of ended. I thought
Oh
was really
yeah.
a really great way that they did that.
What an ending.
His white
So
turtleneck is just beautiful. The man just so nice.
I know. I
Yeah.
think he has a much bigger career in China, but I do feel like we don't see enough Donnie Yen here in the States. Like they do
No,
need to
definitely.
start using him more.
Yeah.
He's IP man, right?
He
hmm
is.
Or is
Yep.
it Ip Man? I always say IP, but could be Ip. I
I
don't know.
think it's it.
Okay, Ip Man.
All right. Well, thank you guys for letting me gush about John Wick 4.
It's an easy
Anytime.
one to gush about. I'm more than happy to let you. Yeah. All right. So my pick was our first horror movie
Ooh,
of the night, and that's The Boogeyman, rated PG-13, directed by Rob Savage, and starring Sophie Thatcher, Vivian Lyra Blair, and Chris Messina, and based on a short story by Stephen King, which I believe it's the Night Shift collection
the
that you
king.
can find that in. Yeah. So this movie hits a really weird nostalgia spot for me.
Hmm.
And we're all around the same age group, so maybe it will hit the same thing for you. If you grew up as a teen in the early 2000s, you probably experienced a long line of horror movies that were basically trying to rip off The Grudge and Ring as best as they
Mm,
could.
mhm.
The Dark
And
Ages.
it was very dark ages. They were not great movies at all. Two of them were actually even called The Boogeyman, but had no relation to the King story. Those movies were terrible, but they were always an event and experience with my friend groups. We always went to go see them. I mean, it was like I don't live in a small town by any means, but you would find every kid at those theaters watching those movies on a Friday night. And this movie aspires to kind of be like those, but is handled much better by a director who clearly knows how to handle shot composition with a lot more interesting things going on than any of those movies did. There's a lot playing around with light because the boogeyman is only ever in the dark, and very much has a fear of light. And then it's also, as a Stephen King adaptation, it does that really cool thing where it'll start the movie with the short story, but the short story is kind of the catalyst for the rest of the movie. So the short story plays out, and then we get an additional piece here. It's PG-13, so it's nothing like overly gruesome or violent, but it does take some steps because it does focus on a creature, much like Pennywise, that steals and murders children. So it does have that dark, that threat. A lot of suspense can be built up. And maybe sometimes it falls a little too much into the generic horror jump scare realm, but with a creature like the boogeyman, I kind of let I kind of accept that a little bit more. And also the design for the boogeyman is also just really cool. So yeah, if you're and it's not long, it's only an hour and 40 minutes, so if you're looking for a quick horror movie night, it's a good one for you.
There we go. I yeah, I didn't realize who directed this until you were talking. So this guy directed the 2020 horror movie Host. Did you say that? I might have
Oh,
spaced out.
no, I didn't know that.
So he directed Host, which was like the big kind of like pandemic horror. Like it came out during the pandemic, and it was essentially just people. The whole thing is on like 4 Zoom screens. So it's people filmed it because we were all at home,
Oh.
and so it was really inventive on in using the pandemic and Zoom as essentially a horror movie. So I've been like waiting for him, and this is like his first big budget kind of go at it. So I've been waiting for him to kind of break out into a new movie. So I definitely want to check this out. But yeah, I just realized that's who directed it.
So I've seen the trailer for this because it played like before one of the films that I was in the theaters to watch. And I do not do scary films. Like I'm such a scaredy cat. But even I could recognize that this film looked good. And the little girl who was in the Obi-Wan TV
Hmm.
shows, Vivian Lyra Blair, she is just such a cute girl, like cute little girl, and like her emotions, like she just I don't know, there's something about her is just like I could just watch her work, like her act for hours, and I was tempted, but I knew like I couldn't watch this because I would not sleep for weeks. So I refrained, but even I, who does not like scary films, can recognize that it looked pretty good.
Yeah, and she is a charmer in this one. I mean, that's what she plays the younger sister, and Sophie Thatcher plays the eldest.
Hmm.
And they're dealing with a loss of their own, and so each of them plays an interesting role. One being a little bit older and kind of understanding more what's happening, and then the other being, you know, kind of the target of the boogeyman. And yeah, the exploration of, how that trauma affects their fear is done really well by Vivian Blair.
Hmm. Yeah.
I was looking at the letterbox reviews, and the one person was just like, "Bro, just turn on the lights. Laugh at my a off." I love those witty, stupid, stupid reviews that had nothing except like nitpicking the movies. But
Well, I love, like, yeah, this movie's littered with things where if you really want to deem them plot holes, you could, but
Mm.
at the same time, they kind of get around why you can't just leave lights on,
yeah,
especially because the boogeyman does spend time actively knocking lights out. So
Yeah. Which to me, that's the scary part. It's like, y even though you can try to protect yourself, right? Like, it's not perfect. So, that just thinking about it, no, I can't.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'll be definitely seeing this. Emma, my partner, loves horror movies, so we like see as much as we can.
nice.
Maybe, like, I should watch a version where it's, like, happy music, instead of the
That sounds like it would be
suspenseful
worse.
music. 'Cause honestly, it's like all these scary movies, like, the music or the sound has a lot more to do with it, and, there are jump scares too, but, a lot of it is just that anticipation and tenseness, and I'm just like, "Ugh, no, I can't."
You're gonna watch the Boogeyman with the Hobbit, the Shire
Yeah,
soundtrack, Howard Shore soundtrack going in the background.
that'll be an experiment.
Yeah.
All
It's
right.
actually funny. I can't really recall the soundtrack of this movie. I don't know if there was much of one. But yeah, anyway.
All right. Should we keep it going with horror? The horror?
Yeah, let's do it.
It looks that way.
Yeah. So the next movie I wanted to talk about called Knock at the Cabin by M. Night Shyamalan. And I think if you remember, I think it was me, Panda, and Ian when we did our end of the year a couple years ago. I talked about Old on that one, the last M. Night
Yes.
Shyamalan movie. So clearly, I am a sucker for the night. But yeah, I saw this opening night. It's based on the book by Paul Tremblay. He's a horror writer, and I've read most of his stuff, so I was pretty psyched when they were finally adapting his stuff or his books. I was like, oh yeah. And and the big reason I wanted to see this is because it's front and center starring Dave Bautista. And I've been ever since I saw him. I wasn't a huge fan of his wrestling. I kind of weaned off by the time he started really popping. But once I saw him taking roles and even like Guardians or Blade Runner 2049, just anything, I was like, oh, this guy like definitely has talent and he takes it seriously. And I'm just waiting for him to like break out. And this is the movie where I'm like, that dude's going to win an Oscar one day. Probably be for a supporting role because that's where all the more interesting things do. But he is just so good in this role, so committed, and is just physically, it's about a gay couple and their daughter are on holiday at a cabin, and four random strangers just walk up and led by Dave Bautista. And if you've seen him, he is just a massive, intimidating figure and he walks up to the daughter. So when you see contrasted, you're just immediately as a human and empathetic person, you're like, oh my God, like what's going, you're already just
Uh-huh.
uneasy. Yeah. And from there, I don't want to spoil like where the story goes. In typical M. Night fashion, he might go on a little too long and a little, it's might not satisfy everyone by the end. But yeah, I think the casting of Batista was just so brilliant. Just he gives a bunch of monologues, and it really doesn't. This movie doesn't work without him. I'll say that. Like that's how flimsy kind of this is the tread is with with this film, where it's like if you don't have someone who can pull that off, both on an acting level and just the way he looks, like I can't. He has this. He's huge, but he also has this tucked in demeanor where he's very proper and very polite. But what they're doing is so kind of ridiculous that it really ties the movie together. And yeah, I loved it. I rewatched it like 2 or 3 times,
Oh wow.
solely for his performance. It's rated R, but the violence a lot of the times M Night is really kind of he doesn't really show the violence for what the things that happen. He kind of leaves your mind kind of go in the
Mm,
places. And I love the story of kind of what is really going on. There's something that's they're showing is happening, but you don't know if that's actually.
mm.
I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, I know Jingles has seen it. I don't know Panda. I know you don't like horror, but I think you'd like this one. I don't think it's
Well,
not super scary.
that's my question to you is that so it's not like supernatural or paranormal, is it? Or maybe?
It's up to the viewer. It's not
Okay.
in the sense that it's like scaring you.
Okay. It sounds
That's
like
the M.
it's more
Night Shyamalan bit for sure. Yeah.
it sounds like it's more suspense.
Yeah. I think hard there, but there is some, it is rated R. There is one scene at the end that is a little graphic, but it's not.
Okay.
It's not. It's just not. It's not there to scare you. It's just to make you feel unease
Uneasy.
and then question. I would
Okay.
guess.
Those
Um,
those I'm more likely to be able to do when it's like straight on like demonic or whatever.
mm,
That's I'm just like no, thank you. But yeah, this sounds really interesting. I've seen the previews for it, and I haven't read the book. I think it's called the book has a different name, The Cabin at the End of the World.
yep.
Yeah.
Better title.
Um, which I've heard is a really good book. So I'm curious. Did for you did it like hold up between the book and the film?
Yeah, yeah, it was a good adaptation. I thought when I read that book and I saw M. Night Shyamalan was making it, I was like, perfect. It's a perfect combination
Oh,
because
interesting.
his books, the endings are always kind of ambiguous. He
Okay.
likes these ambiguous things, and when M. Night was attached, I'm like, oh, of course. Who else
Ah.
is going to have that except someone with it? He did change the ending, the director. I don't know if I like it better or not, but it's definitely a choice and it's different from the book and it makes its own thing. And I will just say this: if you've ever seen an M Night Shyamalan movie, it's again the same where he really dives into like religion and faith.
Mm.
That's clearly something that's always on his mind through the start of his career, and this is, I mean, it's no different. It's very much
Except for
friends.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Sorry,
Oh, did I
his
mention that movie? Sorry.
that's true. Not just garbage. No, yeah, that's true. But so yeah, I think that's like a bigger core theme that's kind of wrapped in a thriller horror. Uh, but
Mhm.
Jingles, what did you like this? I don't remember your review.
I actually really enjoyed this movie, but pretty much for all the reasons you said, like Dave Bautista really just pulls this movie together
Yeah.
in like a really strong way. That being said, I think Jonathan Groff actually also
Hmm.
does a really good job. The only thing I kind of wish is we got more out of the couple than what we get. And I think that would have maybe helped with my feelings of suspense a little bit more. But that being said, I love the way M. Night Shyamalan does some of the stuff in this movie. Like the opening sequence is very reminiscent to me of 70s and 80s suspense thrillers where you see a lot of images that you don't really quite know what to make of them. And but then as the movie goes on, those images, the meaning behind them becomes readily apparent, right?
Mm.
And it's just a really good way to kind of start the film. There's a shot where Dave Bautista shakes hands with the little girl, and just
Incredible.
seeing that, yeah,
So
it's
good.
amazing. Just seeing the difference in their size, but how gentle he is
Right.
fantastic. Yeah, and then yeah, just for I was kind of surprised to see this was rated R, and in hindsight, I can kind of see why they decided to go that route. But he doesn't to say this is there's a lot of death in this movie, but there's not a lot of graphic violence,
Mm.
Right. He
if
doesn't
like
show it.
any.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Do you think it's more like PG-17 or PG-13?
I think it's, like, just on the cusp of PG-13R. Yeah,
Okay.
PG-16 maybe.
There's just one scene at the end. I think that like
Yeah,
they just which I was kind of I don't even think they need to show that, but yeah,
yeah,
it's you could do it, Panda. I think you'd like this movie. I actually think you would
yeah,
enjoy it.
yeah,
Okay,
I
I'll
think
watch
it's
it with
worth a
all the
shot.
lights on.
Yeah,
You're gonna give it
and
2 stars and curse me afterward.
Yeah, and that's what I'm not a huge M. Night Shyamalan fan. I think I've been burned a couple too many times,
No, no,
but
stay in it. Stay. We've gone this far, Jingles. Come on.
yeah. Oh, glass still holds a place in my mind that I wish it didn't.
That's true. I just watched this, and then I was on like Sky High. I was like, he can do no wrong. And then I watched for the first time. What's the one with the grandparents? The Visit.
Oh, yeah, The Visit.
I hated it. I was like, this guy's an idiot.
Yeah,
So I'm kind of on a balance for him. I go up and
yeah,
down.
yeah. But, I think this is worth your time and, um,
Okay.
yeah.
I will maybe give it a try. I am definitely intrigued. I definitely won't watch The Boogeyman, but this one has more of a chance.
That's all we ask for. Being
Yep.
intrigued.
All right, Panda,
My
your next
turn?
pick. Yep.
Oh, here we
All
go.
right.
So good.
Okay, so I'm gonna be the one whose picks are just not gonna be any surprises for anyone. But I did pick Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Rated
Someone
PG.
should.
Very, very different from, the previous two picks that we just talked about. And this one I didn't realize it was directed by three different people.
Yep.
Um, it was is it Joaquin? Okay. Joaquin Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. And stars some very awesome people, which, by the way, when I was watching this movie, I thought that I was hearing the voice of Ryan Reynolds, but it is not Ryan Reynolds. It's
From who?
Jason Schwartzman.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
okay. No, you're actually right. I made that exact same mistake. I was,
Oh
"Who is
my god!
this?" Yeah.
I was like, I didn't know Ryan Reynolds was in this movie. He's not. He's definitely
Yeah.
not in it, but sounds like him. Um, and yeah, it's based on the Spider-Man comics. So I'll start with the pros. I think the soundtrack for this movie is the winner.
Mm.
Like it
Ooh.
really, really stands out and really like gives the whole film the vibe that they wanted it to have. Um, it was amazing. The animation was really good, and there was like different styles of animation. Um, that was really, really cool. Very true to like comics origins and the feel of like the storytelling and the pacing and just kind of like the absurdness of it. Um and I know that like Gwen was pretty cool.
Oh,
And Miles is pretty cool, but honestly, can you guess who stole the movie for me?
Spider Punk.
No,
The baby.
the baby, Spider-Man and his daughter. Oh
Oh,
my
yeah.
goodness. Oh, so cute. That was such a brilliant move on their part, in my opinion. And I love that. I do have some cons though. This is not a perfect movie.
Mm.
I do think that maybe because I'm not the audience for this kind of content at the moment, there was a little too much like teenage drama with the parents and a little like too much focus and drawn out um of those moments. But you as a parent, maybe you feel very different.
Oh, boy.
I think it was still good. But there was just moments I was just like, okay, can we speed it up a little bit? Because this movie also has a really long runtime for what it is.
Mm.
So that's my other complaint is I did feel the movie was too long. It's like 2 hours and 40 minutes. And it's a part one. Or it's like it's not a full arc. Um, and I didn't think I would say this, but I think some of the action scenes were actually a bit too long. So those are my complaints.
Wow. Sounds like more cons than pros, Panda. My goodness.
Hey, hey, I
That
did
baby
really like
carries
it
a lot.
though. That baby,
Yeah.
that baby was amazing.
Um, yeah, I'm just now I'm stuck on the cons. So I will say, like for me, those moments with the parents, I feel like that's going to give the film longevity. Because there's certain scenes where it's not a spoiler. Miles is talking to his dad, unbeknownst to his dad, and then of course ones with his mom that I really feel like kind of will anchor the film going forward or in rewatches and things like that. Because just this theme of I don't know. I don't want to get into parent corner, but when you put a child out into the world, like, this one of the biggest fears you have is, not that they're gonna survive, but, like, that they're gonna have friends, like, people will like them, You don't want them to be Steven Glansberg at the table. But at the same time, like, there's a moment with his mom that she's saying, like, make sure that you're worth it, make sure people you're around you that are around you know that. And on my first viewing, I didn't realize that comes into the play, later, where people don't,
Mhm.
value miles and things like that. So I think that stuff, looking back on it, it's going to be a little more poignant. I agree with you. It's a long movie, so like at a certain point, you're like, all right, come on, let's go. But for me, those were kind of really touching moments that I'm glad kind of like calmed the action down, because it does get the action does really get wonky and
Yeah.
just a little nonstop.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and totally feel free to be in parent corner because you're here to represent the parents. Neither Jingles and myself are we have kids.
Absolutely not. That's not for me, thanks. But, you know, uh, I think I actually find myself somewhere in between both of you, because I do find the value of the parent bits in that it's kind of um, the parent figures are or mentors are always an integral piece of Spider-Man,
Yeah,
and so I really like that they took the time to show why Miles is the way he is and what lessons his parents are trying to bestow on him, because I think later down the road in even the second part of this movie, or the second movie, it's key. He needs to have that character development, and it's not
Mhm.
necessarily something we got in the first one. So
mm,
they needed to have some time to get it in there. That being said, the first hour of this movie does drag for me a little bit. It's really fun to do the catch up bit, but then it gets a little monotonous when we start, having the same conversations 2 or 3 times in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
yeah,
Waiting
Um,
for the
yeah.
Spider-Verse sections.
Yeah.
I I will say, like, and everyone's saying this, it's not like we're bringing anything new to this, but the art, like Panda said, the music's the best part for her in this, and for me, it was just the artwork, and the animation style. Like, I really just I don't know what other word to say other than like unbelievable, but it was unbelievable to look at. Like in the first movie, when someone would come through a portal into the world, that character had their own art style. Spider Pig, he
yeah.
had his distinct one. Where now we're getting like whole worlds have their own distinct art style, like
That
not
is
just the
really cool.
character, but the world. And in particular, Gwen's world with like the watercolor, the water paint or
Oh, yeah.
watercolor kind of feel was just where they blend into each other on the walls or in the sky was. I haven't seen anything like it. I really haven't.
It's a very artistic film. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and I do love, like, because it is in the animated medium, it's able to actually draw a lot more from the comics than any of the live action stuff can.
Right.
Because,
100%.
like, those Gwen sections look almost exactly like the comic, which is amazing
Mhm.
and really brings it to life in a much more, vibrant way.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree. I really did appreciate the artwork. And I think overall though the music really tied everything together because that was more of a consistent feel throughout. And I do like Spider-Punk. That was really cool.
Well, his music in particular was cool. Like the back,
Yeah.
whenever he would make an appearance, it's like, oh yeah, getting hyped.
Mhm.
And I love that his, like, animation was never the same. It always was just all over the place, which and it's is amazing. You can't do that in a live action show or movie. That's just
Right.
not gonna happen. Daniel Kaluuya, I didn't realize it was him at first, but he does a really
Yeah, I
good
didn't
job.
either.
Yeah.
That was really well done. Like all the voice acting was really well. I did have a question. How do you feel about Oscar Isaac's character?
Uh, me personally, I thought he was like one of the best parts of the film, and yeah. And
Okay.
but you don't think so, or just his choices?
I really liked him for 70% of the film.
Well,
And then there were
yeah.
parts where I was just like, dude, this is a little too much. Like it was actually taking away from my enjoyment rather than
Oh,
yeah.
just his like ideas. Again, I don't want to give away plot, but like his ideas of In the story, you're saying, or what? Anything he was doing in particular, the way he was
Then
performing?
okay, so I think some people were talking about this in Discord. The humor and like self-awareness in this film like can be hit or miss. There were moments where it's like it is so fun because it is so self-aware, and I think you guys know like certain
Mm.
parts I'm talking about, especially a certain meme. And there were parts where you're just like, "Oh my gosh, this is so fun." And then there were other parts where it's just like, "Okay, this is a little too much." Like it's actually shattering my disbelief and hindering on the fantastical elements. And he was Oscar Isaac's character was one of them where it was just like a little too much in his criticism and too harsh and like too long, too much screen time
Mm.
for it.
That's interesting.
Interesting.
I felt like the same way that you're saying, but not because of him, but other
Mm.
uh, elements like the memes. But it was more. I'm definitely not giving things away, but there's things that popped up in here that made people cheer. Maybe that I was like, I wish this was more.
Okay,
I wish this was more its own thing,
I see.
like the first one. So some of that took me out, and so. But other than that, yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like you brought up Jason Schwartzman, who I thought was so good as the spot.
Yeah,
Like his voice acting was really funny and really just going for it and memorable. But it's and he's the villain of this movie. People have seen it, and it kind of shifts, and you don't see him for a big portion, and it moves
yeah,
more into Oscar Isaac territory. And I get what you're saying. I liked kind of the back and forth between him and Miles ideologically,
yeah.
and I like his suit. His suit's cool.
It is very
Yeah,
cool.
and I love how
Speaking
much they
of
play with it.
yes, speaking of the villain though, I really enjoy this villain. Like
Right?
I think this might be the most enjoyable Spider-Man like adaptation villain I've seen. Just the whole arc
Yeah,
of that character.
And it's funny how like they use the fact like the spot's like a D-list villain, and like they use that in the story,
yeah.
Yep.
to as
Well, yeah, I do. Man, that is spoiler, isn't it? I I love how they get him to be driven to pursue higher villainy.
Uh-huh.
Let's just
Yeah.
put it that way.
Yeah.
Because because the idea of someone like the Spot being a mockery, even though like that's an incredibly valuable power once you really start thinking
Understand
about
it.
its uses, yeah, and seeing how that plays out is really interesting.
Yeah.
So is this one? So you guys still think the first one's better, or do you have a second one preference?
Think I still have I think the first one still wins it out for me. The "What's Up Danger"
Yeah,
scene, it just can't be beat.
that's
That
same thing
skyline's
here.
beautiful.
I think I do like the first one a little more because the storytelling was tighter and it's hard to beat like that was the first kind of experience. And
Mm,
so that like awe and surprise, like not knowing what to expect going in, that's hard to beat.
yeah, I mean, and Nick Cage, Spider Pig. I mean, you just can't. Hard to top that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't
Although
have enough Spider-Pig.
the
Yeah,
baby really
she was great. What was her
give
name?
give the baby
Mayday.
yes, Mayday. Give Mayday more screen time and I'll be happier.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll go into spoilers some other time, but the relationship between Peter B. Parker and his daughter and just talking to Miles, like I teared up a few times
Oh,
those, about just those three. So anyway.
yeah.
Gwen's interactions with her father were fantastic.
Oh my
That's the
god.
thing. I do say that I feel like this movie was a little long. Um, Kudos for trying to make a bunch of characters work and not just be side bits that are caricatures. I mean, because all of those characters can be that so easily.
Right.
Right.
Um, and they definitely try to give everyone a little bit of respect, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Also, speaking of respect, I do appreciate that Marvel and Sony are playing well together
Oh
to
boy.
create this film.
Yep.
That's all I'll say. That was nice.
All right. Well, in keeping with politeness, maybe we'll get to Jingles.
We'll talk about a little bit of etiquette in polite society. So yeah, that's my second pick is Polite Society, which is rated PG-13 and directed by Nita Manzoor and starring Priya Kansara, Ritu Arya, and Nimra Bucha. This was a film that I really didn't know what to expect out of, but I think it's coming out at the right time because it's definitely getting boosted by that triple R, triple R
Mm.
Oh
love.
yeah, definitely.
It's it's supposed to be an action film, but it's also very much a coming of age film, especially for Priya Kansara. She plays the youngest daughter in a family with two children, and her sister is a 30 something who was supposed to go off to college and become an amazing, fantastic artist, super successful. And she pretty much fails at that task. Meanwhile, her younger sister wants to become a stunt double. So she's really into fighting. She's really into martial arts and hand to hand combat to the point where she is, recording herself and going on YouTube. And she has, this idol that is, I want to say she was from like American Gladiator or something back in the day. Um, but, really into her stunts. And so this movie kind of plays in a fun way in that you don't know really if it's sci-fi or fantasy because it is a coming of age story. And her sister, oh, and I forgot to mention that part. Her older sister, as a, you know, quote unquote failure, is kind of starting to get pushed by her parents to be placed into an arranged marriage.
Ooh.
Yeah. Which, probably something that is maybe a little more typical for that culture, but something that the younger sister just doesn't understand or, perceives as a bad thing because she believes that it's going to limit her sister because she wants her sister and her to pursue their dreams and get what they want out of life. Makes sense, right? So, where the sci fi fantasy aspects of this movie kind of come into play is that we see a lot of fight scenes, really fun fight scenes that you can't really tell if they're Priya against random people in her life who are proving to be difficult or are objects in the way of her success. And you don't know if these fights are real or just kind of theater of the
Mm.
mind type things.
Okay.
But then the arranged marriage is happening on the side of all this. And you start to realize that this movie is taking on a really weird, like, Get Out style thing is
Uh-huh.
happening. Um, where, yeah, I don't want to spoil that piece, but that if you've seen Get Out, you probably already know where I'm kind of going. And so you start realizing that no, these fights are actually happening, and there's actually a lot of weird stuff going on in this world. And it all just has this kind of blanket of this is, how Indian and Pakistani culture perceives marriage, perceives, a
Mm.
woman's role in life. And these two sisters are desperately trying to fight that. So it's it's a really fun movie. It's really charming. The leads are incredibly charming and I was pleasantly surprised when I saw it because I don't know if I was really expecting much out of it when I went in. So I was glad to see that it played out really well.
Nice.
Yeah, this was this is the one I was talking about in the beginning where a lot of these are big hitters, but this is kind of like the hidden gem, I feel like, that, underseen. I rushed to watch it when I saw you picked it. I was like, all right, I had it on my watch list already, but I was like, "Oh, I gotta get it in." And yeah, I liked it. I agree with you. I think the best part were the two sisters. I'm like convinced they're sisters in real life. Like they were
Oh
that
yeah,
good at being
they were
like
so good.
sisters and the bickering and but it does mash up this like fantastical thing where I saw someone compare it to almost like a Scott Pilgrim type of like
Oh,
Yeah,
thing with the
it's
fights a
interesting.
definitely
little
got that
bit.
aspect as well. Yeah.
And it also
Okay.
does this thing where they use like one scene where the sisters are kind of butting heads and obviously they get into a martial arts fist fight as is nature with sisters, but like when one of them says something they don't like and there's like animal music like a roaring in the back, kind of like Mean Girls, that when that
Yeah,
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, yeah.
at the mall.
So yeah, yeah. So it really has this a good sense of humor. Like even the people that created it and the people that acted in it, it really is funny. And the main girl, has best friends that are kind of these odd, like kind of the Mary and Pippin kind of weird sidekicks. But I really liked it. And it's heartfelt and it's really from. I will say, and I said this in my review. the ending didn't work for me, and
Oh, okay.
that left turn, I wish it was more of like a coming of age that, like you said, focused on the sisters a little more and just had weird, cool fights in it. Because when the ending happened, I was like, "What the heck's going on here? Did I miss something?" And I didn't put together what you said, Jingles. I see it now, like the what it's kind of actually saying about maybe that lifestyle. But when I was watching it, I'm like, it was like, what kind of movie is this? It's not bad. It was just different than I was expecting. Got lulled into, but it's definitely worth watching. And it's really just the tone is really they nailed the tone. I think tone is so hard to do in movies. You know, it can go too far in one direction or anything, but the funny kind of really feel good manner that the two sisters have really works. And I
Yeah.
like the fighting. I think you said Jingles you didn't really like the fighting, but it was fine. I thought it was kind of fun.
Yeah, I think the more I sit and think on it, the more I appreciate it because she's not supposed to be a good fighter, right? She
Right.
is absolutely an amateur in all of this.
Mm,
She has no idea what she's actually doing. So when she is fighting, to the credit of the choreographers, she actually gets beat up quite a bit.
Right.
okay.
And so she is still developing her skill. And so by the end, we see that she has progressed enough that the fights actually become phenomenal when especially I didn't realize those dresses that are used in Indian and Pakistani weddings. I didn't realize that they're like 70 pounds or some insane amount. I was
Heavy.
talking to a friend who's Bangladeshi, and she was saying, yeah, there's just so much metal in those things. You're just pretty much anchored to the ground.
Oh my gosh.
Um, so I was like, okay, well, these people are twirling and giving kicks in the air, and so it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I did like the fights in those dresses. They were cool.
Yeah, and I will kind of defend like the left turn of it all in that the movie really does want you to believe that this is a young girl who's just overreacting until that point, and I think if they had actually fueled that fire too much early on, it wouldn't have worked as well.
Yeah, it's fair.
I remember watching the previews for the movie and I was like, what the heck is this? That was like I could tell it was absurd, but it was also like I wasn't quite sure what it was trying to be. And that was really intriguing. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but that's something that Mr. Anderson actually told me. He's like, I really want to watch this. So
Oh,
we're
dang.
we're gonna
Yeah.
make time for it.
Yeah, you'd like it. And it's only like absurd like fight scenes, kind of in like the early Jackie Chan movie sense, like the
Mhm.
Rumble in the Bronx. Like you
Mm.
said, Jingle, she does get beat up a lot. Like she's thrown into like a trophy case at school, shattered glass, not a scratch on her, but like that absurdity that she
Well,
gets up and fights again. Kind of like, yeah.
there's also the weird like interaction between her and the like supposed future
Mhm.
mother-in-law for her sister, and that was just like
Yeah.
that was weird, at least in the trailer. So
It's still weird in the
yeah,
movie.
Yeah. Still checks out.
Yeah,
okay,
especially once you realize all of what that fight means. It gets
okay.
really creepy. So,
Well then,
um, and I do love there's some gags in this. I think Yeti, you mentioned the fight where the sisters go at it with one another, and they're just completely tearing apart their house, right? And
Yeah.
their mom and dad are downstairs, but by the time the fight's done, the doors are torn apart and there's shattered glass everywhere. And you just hear the mom yell, like, you better clean up whatever mess you made. Just
yeah,
goes down. So the humor is there too.
Mm.
nice. Should
All right.
we talk about some honorable mentions before heading into our last picks? Or do you want to save that for the end?
Uh,
Um, Whatever. Yeah, we
yeah,
can.
let's do it. Honorable mentions. What do we
All
got?
right. You can start, Panda. You have them up.
Yeah. Okay. People take bets. Which ones I'm gonna say?
Transformers,
Uh-huh.
Fast and
I mean, there was a
Furious.
Fast movie. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
which
surprised this
movies
wasn't
came
on
out
there.
this year? Okay. So, yes, I just watched Transformers today, The Rise of the Beasts,
Mm.
and I really did not was it today? Yesterday. I really did enjoy it. And what I will say is if you're not a Transformers fan, well, I don't know why you're going to see Transformers
Yeah.
movies. But if you're a Transformers fan, I think this is definitely one of the better ones. And Pete Davidson really surprised me with his performance as
Wow.
Mirage.
The same. I agree.
Like I've heard good things, but I was still like blown away. Really well done. I just wish there had been more of the actual beast Transformers in the film. And it's still a long film, so, some parts could be tightened. But I also appreciated that the female character in this film, the female lead, like, she was very useful and she wasn't like, the Michael Bay sexualized
She wasn't.
character.
She wasn't Megan Fox. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was still beautiful and she's still, she had more depth, which I appreciated. So
Yeah.
that's on my
I
honorable mention.
I agree with you. I think this movie took all of the right cues from Bumblebee and played off of them. But for a movie where they're promoting Beast Wars characters, we need more Beast Wars
I
characters,
know.
which was, I mean, Predacons don't even, I don't even feel bad spoiling this. Predacons don't even show up, which is an atrocity in my
Travesty.
mind for, for a movie that's supposed to have Optimus Primal and Air Razor and Dinobot and all them, which
Yeah.
Dinobot's not in there either. But
Nope. Well,
anyway,
they were
that's,
in like another film,
yeah.
Age of Extinction. Fast and Furious, Fast 10. I mean, what else can I say? I love the franchise, so I'm gonna love this film, and it did not disappoint me. It was more and more of the same, definitely jumping the shark. But there was one part towards the end, at the end, I was like, OMG, they did it. They did it. So, but now we have to wait, until like next year or something to see the continuation of this ending that is supposed it was supposed to be 2 movies, but maybe will be 3 now. I don't know.
Yeah. If I think I know what you're talking about, and
Me
I
too.
docked a lot of points off it for that reason. I was because yeah. If you want a bigger spoiler, go to my letterbox review. But
Yeah.
it's it's kind of ridiculous at this point how many people
Yeah. What I
are
will
around.
say is I think if I really wanted to, I could write an essay comparing Malazan with Fast and Furious,
Oh
and I
my
will
god.
anger both fandoms.
Yeah, but it would be thematically correct. It would be so on point.
All right. Other honorable mentions I have Super Mario Brothers. It was so much fun. It was just like really fun. I had really low expectations when I saw the trailer the first time. And then when I saw the film, it really was like you're watching a movie about playing the games.
Yeah.
It, yeah, it was just so fun. So I'll stop there.
Good one. Jingle, did you have any or
I
so I
think I
can
would
rattle
give.
off mine?
Go for it. You might hit all
Oh.
mine.
Yeah, so I did so just some horror movies that I really liked. You said Evil Dead Rise, which was tremendous. That was like honestly, it's up there with one of my favorite Evil Dead in the franchise. I really like that. The new Scream, I thought was pretty good. It takes place in New York this time. I liked it. I think Scream's like the most kind of competent horror franchise where it's like consistently it's good or great. There's no like real stinkers. I had some problems with the stakes in this one that kind of ticked me off, but other than that, I did think the New York setting just made it really fun. And then there's this movie Sick. This is kind of like I don't. Have you heard of this movie? Either? Sick.
No,
Mm-mm.
this is new.
So this one is. I was going to put this one as like the hidden gem. It's a slasher movie, and it's very COVID specific. Two girls in
Oh.
college. It takes place during the pandemic. Two girls from college go to a cabin to quarantine while they think everything blows over, and of course, a guy or someone, a slasher with a mask and stuff, breaks in and tries to kill them. But it's very specific to COVID. Like in the plot, it's very specific, and
Oh
I think this
wow.
is one of the more inventive ways. Some people really didn't like it because you're kind. I could see an argument be made. You're kind of using pandemic, which killed a lot of people, to kind of further a story, a horror story. But I thought it really worked, and the camera, the way that it was filmed, it came from like an action director, where it's like almost Jason Bourne in a good way, but in a slasher. So when you're getting chased, it's like it's
Oh
really
wow.
inventive. So I would not recommend it to you, Panda. But, uh,
Okay.
I
I'll
mean,
take
you
a look
could
though.
if you
Yeah.
like slashers, you could try it, but it kind of freaks me out a little bit. And
If it freaked
um,
you out, then no,
yeah,
not
slashers
for
get
me.
me for some reason, just because I feel like it's gonna happen one day.
It's too
One day,
real.
I'm gonna forget to lock a door.
Oh, yeah.
Can we bring up? Can I bring up a non-fantasy movie or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
I just want to talk. So, like, my favorite movie of the year is called Rye Lane, and it's on Hulu, and it's like a walk and talk romantic movie, kind of like Before Sunrise. And it's funny, and the two leads are like so wonderful together that I fell in love for them when I was watching it. And it's about a couple in London, and they're just it's really one of those movies where they're walking and talking throughout the streets the whole time, and it's just beautiful. It's really I haven't seen Past Lives yet, and I'm sure that'll be my favorite love story of the year. But up until this point, I um I want everyone who just loves movies to go check out Rye Lane because it's just especially if you're dating someone and need a date night movie. But it's so definitely check that out.
I have not heard of this. And I love
Yeah,
Before Sunset.
yeah, me too.
Well, Before Sunset, Before Sunrise.
Yep.
So, yeah, this is gonna be on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I'll
guys,
have
you
to check
guys will
that
dig
out.
it. Yeah.
I'll have to check out both of those. They both sound really interesting to me.
Yeah. I have another one, but it's between my third pick. So if I can't use it, if I get
You're going.
vetoed, I'll,
Okay.
uh,
I'm very intrigued.
I
I
know.
wanna
I
know
am
what that
very.
pick is.
so are we getting into our final picks?
What does Jingles have?
I think I
Oh,
just
sorry,
have
Jiggles. Yeah.
one or two more movies to add as honorable mentions. I loved all those movies that y'all just mentioned, except for the ones I haven't seen. But I think if I could add it, it's fantasy adjacent in that it's inspired a lot by fantasy, and I'd go Creed 3. That's the movie's amazing. Watching the fight scenes in that, it's very anime-esque in its style, and
Huh.
Michael B. Jordan I think does a really good job handling those.
That's right.
I know, like, nothing about the Creed films, so
Oh, Panda missing out.
They're pretty great. Yeah,
this is really interesting for me.
yeah,
Eye-opening.
yeah. They're definitely worth a watch. I think you do kind of have to watch them in order, so you can't
Okay.
jump right to 3. But
The first
um,
one's the best one, so I mean,
yeah, so you'd be doing
Okay.
yourself a disservice anyway. But yeah, I definitely recommend it. And then the other one that
Mhm.
it's definitely not going to be on any of my top 10 lists or anything, but I think is just a really fun art house horror movie is Infinity Pool.
These are my two
Which
movies. These are my two movies I was
oh,
gonna
no,
pick.
really? Oh, no.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, well then in that case I'll save it. I'll move away.
Well, I was
We'll
gonna
just edit that part
argue.
out.
Yeah,
No,
we
it's
can just
fine.
edit that out.
No. You can keep it in. Well, I was gonna argue for Creed 3 because it's based on an anime inspired. I wouldn't say it's fantasy. It was going to be hard to argue that. And if you vetoed that, I was going to have to talk about Infinity Pool, which I feel like I was in a daze after watching that that movie.
Okay, well
Um,
I won't say any more. We can move on and save those for for when we actually get to your picks. Which actually I think this is your time. So
yeah, this is it. So yeah, so I guess we'll veto Creed 3 because it's not a fantasy story. There's nothing fantastical. It's a boxing film. But if you don't know Panda, Michael B. Jordan, who's the star of it, he now directed the third movie, and he grew up on anime, and so he used anime to inspire the way he filmed this movie. So like there's scenes where he's boxing and he's getting beat up, and you can see him kind of like eyes shoot open and recharge in like a very anime type of sense.
Oh, okay.
And there's like a final fight that is so different than any other Rocky movie that really feels like it's in an anime to an extent. And just I'm not spoiling it, but it's about him and an old friend, and like that
Gotcha.
theme between those two is very, you could see it in anime. So I won't pick that. I will pick, oh boy, this movie, Infinity Pool by Brandon Cronenberg. Uh, so I picked last year with Jingles and Ian this movie called Duel, which I
Uh-huh.
thought was kind of strange and weird. This movie is like, it makes it look like a tame, just I don't know,
yeah.
like a
That's one hell of a comparison,
biopic.
sir.
Yeah, so I'm trying to describe it. It's a couple goes on a vacation to an island. He's a writer, and his fiance or wife is this rich woman, and they meet another couple, and they go out into the island off grounds, right? And they end up committing this crime, and on this island, there's no like real sense of law. And so what? And Jingles could correct me, but I'm pretty sure it's like, in, instead of either the charge is either they die, like the person who committed the crime is killed, or you can have like a clone of yourself. You create yourself again, and you watch them be killed, like by the person who you wronged. So I don't. It's not really a spoiler, but that's how it opens up. Was where he says, okay, he creates himself again, and he watches himself murdered, so to speak, and like he's
Okay.
sitting in an audience, like he's sitting in a high school those seats kind of thing in an auditorium, and from there it goes in a place it's honestly like a fever dream on this island that it just kind of it's like those what are those dolls where you just stack on top of each other kind of thing, you keep unstacking them and there's more
The
little
Russian
dolls.
dolls.
Yeah, it was kind of like that in that sense where the story kept going. And at a certain point, like I finished the movie and I was just I I didn't know how to live life for like 40 minutes. I was like, I don't. So it's one of the movies I can't recommend. It is my third pick, so I now will recommend it for people who are adventurous because it's not even like super scary. It's not really scary at all. It's just so effing weird. And
Mm.
the performance by my queen, Mia Goth, who I adore everything in, and she just weirds me out and is attractive at the same time. I don't know how she does it. She's been in the movie X, Pearl, just a bunch of stuff. And yeah. And the guy from The Northman is the main character. The other Skarsgård brother,
It's Alex, right?
Alexander.
Alex.
Yeah, Alexander. And so he's very good too. Just a lot of his physical emotions that go through, like you can tell his mind is being effed up, just going through all this as well. And I don't know. I don't know how to tell you. I really don't know how to talk about this movie without spoilers, so I won't. But if you're feeling adventurous and you want to get out of your comfort zone and just kind of be really affected by a movie, because that's what I love about film, and same with books. But when they really kind of shake you and just can't stop thinking about them, good or bad. I'm not positive I really love this movie at all, to be quite frank with you, but I can't stop thinking about it. Like I really couldn't stop thinking about it. And that's more than I can say than about a lot of movies that I really did like this year. So,
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I fever dream is the exact right way to describe this movie. I mean, it's it kind of shares some things with. Oh, well, I don't know if that's true, but Brandon Cronenberg's a director that I'm interested in seeing a lot more out of. I love pretty much anything his father's put out. David Cronenberg's put out.
mm,
I think, yeah, I had David Cronenberg's movie on my top 5 of the year last year.
yeah, another very strange, odd
Another,
movie.
yeah, bizarre movie.
Father like son.
The one thing I constantly find that I'm having problems with Brandon Cronenberg though, versus David Cronenberg is David Cronenberg. I can usually kind of start piecing together what his intention is and what he wants you to get out of the film, if there's anything at all. Brandon Cronenberg, I don't really have that happening. Like Infinity
Yeah,
Pool, I can't tell you really what the whole point was. I think there's something about human behavior and depravity, but that's really surface level.
yeah, right.
But this movie has some amazing sequences in it. Psychedelic is a word I would put
Yeah.
on there. And I think it was probably more interesting for me than Possessor, which was his previous movie. So
Oh wow. I I'm just thinking back to now when we did the episode last year. You had Cronenberg and Ian was on. I was like, well, Ian, you like The Fly, like that. He's like, no, no, I don't. I was like, oh, okay. Never mind.
yeah, Cronenberg, not an Ian
Nah,
auteur, I don't think.
would not recommend that movie to any of these
I don't
movies
think
to you.
I've ever seen anything by this director.
No, he's
Um,
got an effed up mind. Well, his dad
Oh yeah.
and him.
well, like father, like son, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
But I will at least check out the trailer of this movie and see how I feel after that.
Yeah. So I will say the only reason I had to pick between these two is because next pick was the one I was going to lean on. A
Huh?
fantastic movie.
Yeah, and this movie for me might make a top 5 at the end of the year. I love
Definitely.
this movie.
Infinity Pool.
No, the one that you're about to talk
Oh,
about.
the one I'm about to say. I see, I see. Well, what I will say is like movies, as much as they are for entertainment and enjoyment, it is also an art form. And so for things like Infinity Pool, even though I haven't seen it just based on what you said, like it is a way of expressing, what the director wants to express. And sometimes weird is what they want to express, and that's okay. Especially if like it leaves such an impression, like a lasting impression on you.
Yeah, I'll always take stuff like this, like that, take chances over just things that are based on, I don't know, Tetris movies or Flamin' Hot Cheeto movies. Like,
Shots
I'm
fired,
not,
dang.
I'm fine with. I mean, I actually heard the Blackberry movie's like awesome, so I want to see that. So I'm not totally against it, but at least I just need more original, just things that
Yeah.
come out of people's
Yeah,
heads. So I'm always gonna give a little more leniency towards that stuff.
that's definitely one thing you can say about this movie, right? Is there's no other movie like it. It's gonna be not yet anyway. Maybe someone will
Uh,
be inspired.
oh God.
All right. So my pick is, and I was surprised that none of you had put it on there. I guess Yeti, you were waiting for me. You were giving me the chance
Yes.
to take this away from you. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves.
Ooh.
And I mean, I was making a list of pros and cons. So pros, right? Oh yeah, if you don't know, it's based on the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing tabletop game, specifically in the Forgotten Realms setting. So the pros here, the humor. I love the humor. It was so good. I really like the plot. I really like the characters. The fight scenes were so much fun. That maze scene, oh, I love it. I don't play D&D. I like tried it a couple times and I like know enough of the gameplay, but I'm not like, super into it. But I really enjoyed this film because it really was like you're you're experiencing a fantasy adventure novel on screen. And there were little nods and references to like fantasy and tabletop gaming, the ones that I could pick up at least, I really appreciated. And cons? What cons? I have no cons. That's it.
Perfect movie.
It is. It's so pleasant.
It is.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think this movie probably would be in my top 5 of the year. I love it so much. I was really disappointed to see that it wasn't doing well at the box office, but since then it's gotten on streaming and it's apparently been like Paramount's number one thing for
Oh,
2
nice.
months in a row. So people are finding it there. I think we just have entered a culture where people don't necessarily go to the theater for movies anymore, right?
Mm.
But or maybe just for certain things like this. I think it's one of those movies that has taken a page out of the MCU playbook and has really gone with it. This movie is so much like Guardians of the first Guardians of the Galaxy
Yes,
movie in that,
that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
it's a bunch of rogues that get together and try to do a little bit of good, even if it's for maybe some selfish reasons.
Yeah. I love found families, and this was
Yeah.
like like near perfect, if not perfect, rendition of a found family.
Absolutely. Yeah, I that's one of the biggest things I can give credit to this movie is Chris Pine and Michelle
Right.
Rodriguez are an amazing duo, and there is like no sexual interest between them at all. They are
Mhm.
just trying to take care of a little girl and
Yep.
they're doing the best they can with it.
Yeah, that was my first thought, was specifically Chris Pine. Like another kind of thing where it's like if he's not amazing, the movie's not as good. But he is so funny, and it's why I believe he's the best Chris. And it's on, I think it was like the Rewatchables podcast or something. Quentin Tarantino was on, and they asked him like, "What's a movie star like that you wish you could work with? Like someone who you wish was bigger and just could lead roles?" And he's like, "Chris Pine." He's like, "That guy can do everything, and he should be the biggest star in the world." And this movie
Oh.
really shows that he just has everything. Like like you said with the Guardians of the Galaxy, he plays this guy who should be unlikable, but because of his charm and his humor and self-deprecating humor, that he's just so lovable. And I don't know, I couldn't get enough of him in this, along with the whole cast. Like you said, Michelle Rodriguez was perfectly cast, and she is part of maybe the best cameo I've ever seen in a movie.
That
With who
cameo was very unexpected.
That was incredible. I couldn't even believe it. And then, a lot of people, and the villain. I mean, Hugh Grant is the bad guy, but he's hilarious. He's also just so funny and like schmarmy and just kind of a sleazeball, but you just can't help but, I don't know, just smile when he's talking. So I
Hmm.
think humor, like Panda said, was the biggest thing for me. Like, I'm not a big D&D guy. I wish I was. I just didn't have a friend group to play with growing up. So I didn't need to get the jokes. You just got the kind of beats of the found family and this Chris Pine being funny, talking this monologue in the beginning, trying to get out of a jail was so funny. Just asking if that one guy's going to show up. He's like, "Are you sure he's not coming yet? It can wait." And it's just right from then, I'm like, "All right, this is going to be good."
That was one of the first films that I saw in theaters this year, and
Nice.
immediately afterwards, I was like, I want to go see it again.
Right. Yes.
That
Yeah.
was so
Perfect
enjoyable.
way to put it. It's like once you finish, you're like, man, I could definitely go see that again.
So
Yeah.
this is what I predict. I think like if they make a second one, I think a lot more people will go to theaters
Mm.
to see that second one now that they have discovered it.
Yeah. I agree. And I think they've tested the waters, and in some ways it's been very successful. So I'm hoping, I've seen a lot of things. Like there are certain characters within the Forgotten Realms that a lot of people I think would really like to see in a movie. Like Dritz is a big one. If you're familiar, I kind of am interested to see if they'll try to go that bigger route of trying to get more familiar things out there. The problem is the group that they would be angling all that at already showed up for this movie, right? So
Hmm.
Yeah.
kinda,
Yeah, I feel like this is the movie that would obviously speak to like our Discord the most. Like, I feel confident recommended this to anyone in the Discord. Like, if you like fantasy at all, like you're not going to come away like, oh yeah, this kind of stunk. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like,
yeah,
it's everything you kind of want in a fantasy, unless you think it's too funny. I don't know. You don't want your
yeah,
fantasy to be as funny, but
And I think so we talked about the characters, but the weapons and the skills of that these characters have and use, like they play integral part in the whole thing, and that
right.
was so much fun. And I think that's where the D&D elements really shown.
Yeah, you got like a shapeshifter. You got the wizard who's not very confident.
Mhm. Yeah, and, the the skeleton, the graveyard. Oh my god. Ah! So good.
that's the other thing. It's a comedy with running gags. Like they actually
Mhm.
go for it in every single thing.
Yeah, and they land.
Like Regé Jean Page, I've never watched
Bridgerton.
whatever show he's in. Yeah, Bridgerton. Never watched that. Probably never will. But
You're
dang, if
missing
he
out.
didn't convince me, I probably should.
Yeah, you should.
Well, he was.
His
Did you
role
ever
is amazing.
did you see that movie from Netflix with like Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans, like super
Uh,
spy kind?
Gray
Mm-mm.
Gray
Yeah, the Gray
Matter?
Man.
Gray Man. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I did.
yeah. So I thought it was okay. I mean, I overall didn't really like it because again, they just don't go to places really. But like John Renaud Page, sorry, I butchered his name. He's in that, and he's like awful and boring and terrible. And I'm like, this guy's the
Yeah.
worst actor ever. And then
Oh
I
no.
watched this, and I'm like, he's amazing. I'm like, how? Like it must. It was just such
I
a
think it's the
180.
script. It's
Yeah, it
the
had to
script
be.
and direction for the Gray Man. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, right. He was like a highlight when he pops in. For the ones
Yes.
he was just a good dynamic with Chris Pine's character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, bring us home.
All right.
From one Chris to another.
The weaker one. We all know.
That's right.
I think we can all agree. Although he does a great job in this movie.
Yeah, his best role.
Uh, my final highlight of this year, and probably will land my favorite movie of the year, is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is rated
Mhm.
PG-13, directed by James Gunn, and starring everyone you know from movies. So, and I just this movie is everything that I love about the MCU and everything I want the MCU to continue to be, and just you know, runs the gamut on the emotions as a finale. I mean, I laughed. I came so dang close to crying. I'm not much of a crier to begin with, so that's saying something. And watching so many people who can be goofballs, but actually also be taken seriously, which is admittedly a huge problem in the MCU right now,
Mm.
is it just did everything right for me. Probably don't need to summarize this movie that much, but
Especially as a third. Yeah.
yeah, it's a third. But basically, we meet all the Guardians again after Thanos is defeated in the blip. Spoilers. And we kind of just see where their lives are. And especially with Rocket Raccoon, who is, trying to hold the team together as best he can, but everything's kind of down in the dumps. And then he gets attacked by someone who is a minion of the person who created him. And I think, and then the movie goes on from there. And I think, especially Rocket's whole storyline in this movie, where he literally has to come face to face with all of his traumas in a way that he has spent 5 movies desperately trying not to do,
Yeah.
is a huge emotional ride that everyone should experience.
Yeah, this was I don't know, since I've seen it so not long ago, I when I came out of it, I was like, this is the greatest movie ever made. My tears were just like it was like waterfall. I couldn't see it getting out the door. I was like, oh, which way's what the parking lot? But a big theme, like you said, with this movie is like if anyone listens to the Robin Hobb podcast, they'll know that I love trauma and just pain. And this is a small tangent, but I was recently watching Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and
Okay.
there's a moment at the end of that movie that choked me up. I wasn't expecting it, but Indy's reaching for this the cup or whatever, and his dad like tells him like Indy like let it go, like really like softly as a parent only can do, like let it go. And I really liked that gun, and the people in this movie thought that was like a core theme of this, of to like let things go, whether that's trauma, whether that's previous relationships, whether that's rage or guilt of anything in your past. Like I just really felt that was a core thing, that kind of being able to let something go is so beautiful, even if it's something that brought you so much happiness. I don't want to spoil things, obviously, but uh, I think at the end of this movie, people just had to let things go one way or another, and then it bursts into the big finale where I'm just crying and clapping. But um, yeah, so this was definitely the most emotional I got in a movie all year, and we'll see if it holds the title. But yeah, it was beautiful. It was a great film.
Completely agree. I if none of you had put it on your list, I would have put this one on my list, and then I probably would have bumped I think at that point I would have bumped Spider-Verse.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it, and especially given that the second Guardians movie was such a disappointment, it was really nice to see them. Not a
I,
disappointment for you?
I made a face. No, no, no. I'm not going to sit by for that slander. Go on.
We can punch it out later. But yeah, it's I knew going in that it was going to be emotional, just like based on the chatter from people who've already seen it, because I saw it fairly late after it was released, and I still wasn't fully prepared for just how emotional that movie was. And I think that maybe a small complaint that some people might have is that the emotional scenes may have been cut a little short, like, because there is still a lot of humor in this movie, and, like, when a moment starts to get a bit too serious, like, immediately the film switches the tone. But for me, I thought it was fine. I thought that the beats were, pretty good, like, almost perfect. The movie was a little long. Just I think that's just a running theme for me, like, you
Everybody
guys
drink.
just
Yeah.
tighten your stories a bit, okay? But yeah, it was so fun, so good. And when I think about why I would have bumped Spider-Verse if nobody else picked Guardians, is all of the characters that you see on screen, like big and small for Guardians, like I really enjoy their screen time. And they were like more fleshed out characters, like Gamora and Nebula and Mantis and like all these like quote unquote side characters, like they probably because you spent, enough time with them throughout all these MCU films, they felt like friends, and I really enjoyed their screen time. Whereas Spider-Verse, there were a lot of like side characters and more
Mm.
like one and done kind of thing, you know? But with Guardians, like it wasn't like that. What I will say is if you haven't seen the Christmas special, the holiday
Yeah.
special, go watch that. Like I think that short film is definitely worth a watch, and then some things will make a little more sense in the Guardians 3 movie.
Yeah, it's just a testament to writing a contained 3 arc story. Like the best part of this is that there's nothing else to do with outside of the Marvel universe. Like this is about the Guardians. It's about characters we met in the first movie. They're not really setting anything else up that plays into a bigger phase or a bigger picture of the MCU. It's just we have this found family. We're seeing it through until whatever end they're gonna have. And I thought that really played to its strengths, not having to worry about, excuse me, any other villains or characters from the Hulk wasn't popping up to do whatever or things like that.
Yeah.
And to your point, I actually thought the humor and the tender moments were perfectly played. Like it brought me up to like the end of Thor 3 where
Mm.
that was kind of bungled, where there's a really emotional moment and then a quip was made. I'm like, okay, well, this is weird. Where I don't think any of that really happened, or at least if the humor, it would cut to a different scene maybe, and then they do it. But yeah, it's a perfect movie that made me cry. What can I say?
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're one of like the 5 people on the planet who haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I also think it was like really creative, like the worlds that he built. Like, what was that one place they went that was like all like it's like a
Oh,
living organism they had to break into, but it was like a
yeah.
space station. That
Yeah.
was
That
like,
was so creative. That's I think probably part of what makes this movie so successful is that Marvel has continued to give James Gunn the ability to actually do what he like and get his vision out there. At
right.
least that's how it feels. I kind of thought they did the same with Taika Waititi in Ragnarok, but definitely not in Love and Thunder.
That one was interesting, but
Yeah,
different
yeah.
topic.
So yeah, that's a totally different thing. But I think part of giving James Gunn that freedom to just kind of get as creative as he feels. I mean, I think James Gunn too, one of the few people who can handle a weird bungled uh love triangle where two of the characters in that triangle are the same person, but one of them's dead. Like it's
Yeah.
just a weird complex situation that could have been handled horribly. And I thought it was done really well.
Yeah, I thought that was so well done. Like, really, I thought that could have like ruined the movie. Like, if whatever direction they went, if it was kind of more generic, I'd say. But the way it was played was just so. Like I said, that's what I was thinking of when I was talking about that indie moment a little bit, or one of the aspects. And I thought, like to your point in the beginning, I thought it was one of Chris Pratt's best performances in moments like that. And I wish you could find that groove all the time. I think sometimes he's pushed into this too cool guy, like in the Jurassic World movies, where he can't be funny. He's just, the cool guy who just rides raptors or, herds on. Whereas I like this kind of vulnerability and, but he does have humor and, anyway.
All right. Well, we've hit a pretty decent mark on this conversation.
We did it.
We did it. We finished. And we didn't even get into like TV shows that were amazing so far this year. Anything you guys are looking forward to in the last bit of the year here? I know like for
Barbenheimer.
me, yeah, Barbieheimer. I know I'm really looking forward to that TMNT
Yes,
animated
me
movie that's
too.
coming
Oh
out.
my goodness, me too.
August
Yeah,
3rd,
I never
baby.
thought I would say that. Here we are. Yeah, and then obviously there's Dune coming.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Doom Part 2.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that was coming out.
Bald
I
Elvis.
spoke too soon on way too many things.
Yeah, I was like, Guardian's gonna be your favorite movie of the year? I don't know,
Yeah,
man. There's still more to come.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
but
well,
anyway.
condolences to the Flash for not making our 9 must-see films.
Have you even seen it yet? I haven't
No.
seen it.
I want to. I want to see it because I, yeah, I'm conflicted, but I'm gonna watch it on streaming. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, me
same.
too.
Uh, yeah, same might go for indie. I know that was out before the time of our recording, but I just couldn't quite find the time to get to it. And
Same.
Yeah,
at
I was
some point, I
thinking
was
about
just
it. Yeah, but yeah, whatever.
yeah. But anyway, well, thank you for joining me. That concludes our episode. You can find us on the Legendarium's Discord. The invite link is on thelegendarium.com. We are also on Twitter at Green Team Pod and Reddit. Join us in supporting the Legendarium via Patreon.
Thank you to Rise and Brave for starting it all, and Craig for letting us letting us play in the sandbox.
Yep.
Yeah. And thank you to our panelists, Befuddled Panda and Yettibeats. I'm your host, Jingles90. Until next time, bye.
Bye bye.
Adios.